Shalawam. Welcome back to the Hidden Chosen. I am Hadassah Bedside One. Welcome back to End Times Prophecy Watch. And now we're moving on to part 13. We're going to take a look at the two witnesses. And we know that, like all the other topics that I've discussed, that this too is being taught in great error. So let's get started. There are many errors being taught as sound doctrine today, especially amongst the brethren of the southern kingdom. These errors range from the names and titles of our Savior and Ha'aba, meaning our Father, and the true location of our land, our true language, which is the Oberai language, the second Exodus, the location of the northern kingdom tribes, and much, much, much more. Even how we're going to get out of here. Some say spaceships, some say luxury liners. So many false teachings out there. That's why Hamashiach warned us that there will be the rise of false prophets leading, or rather misleading, the flock. But if you don't know, you're going to follow what they're saying because what they're teaching is popular. All right. Then there are false teachings regarding the two witnesses who are to come. It is being taught that these two witnesses are symbolic of the two kingdoms of Yashwa'al, the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. If you understand our history and the end times prophecies, this teaching will not make any sense. Because if you looked at my previous study called The Second Exodus, I explained to you who will be going in the second Exodus and why. 12 tribes will not be going in the second Exodus, only the northern kingdom. So if you have not seen that study, I will strongly encourage you to please go take a look at it. And I've also linked it to the other studies, the more detailed studies about the second Exodus. It is nothing like what others out there are teaching. And yet the word is clear, and I showed you with the evidence written down in the prophecies the truth about the second Exodus. And yet many cannot understand it. These two witnesses are two men who are also prophets, who will be sent by Alahayam to pronounce his judgments upon the entire earth, but their location, meaning where they will be prophesying from, will be in the land of Yashwa'al. Now, just the fact to know that they are called two prophets. We're not called prophets. Yes, there were a number of our forefathers who were called prophets, but Yashwa'al on the whole were never called prophets or a prophet. If you want to use the singular pronoun, singular description, we were never called a prophet or prophets. We were called the bride of the Lamb. We called the wife. We called the daughter. But we were never ever called a prophet. And that should be evidence enough for you to put the two pieces together and realize, no, this doesn't make any sense. It will be here, meaning our land, the true land called Yashwa'al, that the fakers in that land will be judged until they flee from the land, as it will be made desolate, not destroyed, but empty. Empty of people, empty of buildings. All evidence of their existence in our land will be gone. That's why we call it desolate. Okay? To await the northern kingdom who will arrive after their second exodus is completed. All right? So let's look at Revelation chapter 11, starting from verse 1. And there was given me a reed like unto a rod, and the angel stood, saying, Rise and measure the temple of Alahayam and the altar, and them that worship therein. Now you have to understand that when Alahayam speaks through his servants, that he does not always speak a clear word. He speaks almost poetically, or his servants speak poetically on his behalf, or prophetically, or mysteriously. Because not everyone is supposed to understand what he's saying. Only those that have ears to hear will understand what he's saying. And if you don't have ears to hear, you're not going to understand, and you're going to glean your wisdom from another source, an evil source. All right, let's read on. But the court which is without, meaning outside the temple, you leave it out. Leave out and measure it not, for it is given unto the Gentiles, and the holy city shall they tread underfoot 42 months, meaning 3.5 years. So I'm going to come back to that. Let's go back to the Gentiles. Who are the Gentiles that he's speaking of? He's speaking about the fakers in our land. It will have to be our land, Yashwa'al, because he's speaking about the holy city. And the holy city is located only in one place, and that's the holy city is called Rawach, located in Yashwa'al. So the Gentiles here that he's speaking about are the people currently living in our land, and there'll be more coming into to defile the land even further because they know their time is growing short. So he said, give it to them for 3.5 years. So let's go back to the very beginning, verse 1, talking about the reed and the rod and the measuring of the temple of Alahayam and the altar and them that worship therein. So obviously, if he's speaking about the Gentiles, given the outer court to trample upon, to desecrate, to defile, he's not literally speaking, or he's not speaking of a literal temple. He's speaking symbolically, once again, poetically, speaking of Alahayam Yahweh, speaking through his servant Yahweh. And this measuring and this temple is, and the altar, the altar is speaking of, or they are symbolic of worship. Because that's what we used in our land and in the wilderness when we worshiped Alahayam Yahweh. The altar was for our offerings, and the temple was where we made our offerings to him, and we worshipped him. So when he told Yehochanan to take the reed and go measure, that was judgment. That symbolic of judgment. The worship that is in his temple, that is but therein, who is worshiping according to his desire, to his will. This is not a literal temple. This is about whoever that call upon him, and those who do not, of course. Where and what and who are they worshiping? Now, this can go all the way back even to our brethren that claim that they're worshiping the Most High. So they're being measured against the standard that was given to Yehochanan, which is the reed. The reed is the standard, and he was sent to measure, which is to judge. Alahayam Yahweh was using Yawakanan to judge those who claim to be worshiping him. And that includes the fakers in our land. All right? And even though this was set thousands of years ago, it was a prophecy put in action. It was put in place for the time that we're currently living in and for the end of until the end of age. Because that's why he said 3.5 years, 42 months. Okay? Let's read on. We have to keep in mind that these visions which Yochanan had were of end times events which have not taken place as yet, with the exception of a few flashbacks to our history. And we looked at that when we saw that when we looked at Revelation 12 woman, that study, okay? The temple spoken of here was not a literal temple, but it is symbolic of worship, and the measuring of the temple will be the judgment sent forth to those who fail to worship Alahayam Yahweh, due to the fact that they will be Gentiles, and speaking of the fakers in our land, but also of our own people. Our own people who choose to worship pagan gods. And that's why he said, and them that worship therein, meaning the ones who are called to worship Alahayam Yahweh, speaking of the brethren. But then he also extended this judgment to those who are in the land, claiming to be us. The outer court was left out because that was the place where those of our brethren who committed sin and transgressions waited to be cleansed when they brought their sacrifices to the priest. So that's back in the day when we had a temple or a tabernacle. The outer court was for those who committed transgressions, and they brought their offerings, their sacrifices, to be cleansed so that they can enter into the congregation once again, clean. That's where they had to wait. It was also the place of worship, as the one who was made clean can now worship Alahayam there. Remember, only the priesthood were allowed into the holy place, and the Holy of Holies was only the high priest once a year. All right? And as the Gentiles in our land are unclean, filled with sin and transgressions, they'll be given 3.5 years, which will be the maximum remainder of time left for them in our land. So when the two witnesses show up, it means that they're given only 3.5 years to either clear out or be destroyed. And those that remain until the final, that earthquake that will come, they will be plagued by the judgments that these two witnesses will pronounce. All right? All according to the will of Alahayam Yahweh. We know that they will further contaminate our land in those remaining 3.5 years. As the holy city spoken of is Yerushalayim, also symbolic of worship. I mean, these ones will be influenced by the beast empire. Now, this will be beast empire number 8, the last beast empire. Okay? It will be influenced by it. And so they will do all manner of wickedness in that land. I mean, look and see what they're doing right now. They have their pride parade there now. All kinds of stuff they have going on there. Oh, yeah. All kinds of wickedness you see going on there. And not only there, you see the same people in different lands committing abominations with children. Oh, yeah. Okay, let's move on. Bear in mind that these 3.5 years will be the second half of the last 7 years of the end times. Afterwards, time will cease to exist. However, the final 7 vial judgments will continue on. So, by trumpet number 5, or is it number 6? Number 6, sorry. By trumpet number 6, that will be the second woe, time will cease to exist. And so the remaining judgments, they will occur in a rapid succession at this point of time, as the northern kingdom will be in our land, Yashraal, by this time. The 2 witnesses have already gone up before the earthquake in the land that would cause 7,000 of those people to die. And then the rest would just flee to the lands where they originally came from. Russia, Germany, Poland, wherever, those European countries. All right? Because that's where most of them come from. Let's read on. Revelation chapter 11, verse 3. And I will give power unto my 2 witnesses, and they shall prophesy 1,260 days, clothed in sackcloth. So again, that will be the 42 months, which will be 3.5 years. So the judgment that Yawachanan, remember, he's given the reed to measure the worship. Though that's to do with the judgment that will be sent to those who are not worshiping according to Alahayam Yahweh. So here's the thing. Our people, talking about the southern kingdom, well, the southern kingdom long gone, but the northern kingdom, they will not face any more of these judgments after trumpet number 5. All right, trumpet number 5, they will hear or see no more judgments. By trumpet number 7, they'll be in the land. All right. Slide, the previous slide, I wanted to say something. So when they prophesied 3.5 years, it will begin at the first trumpet. All right. That's where it will begin. So let's read on because I will be repeating myself. All right. These 2 witnesses will be 2 prophets from our historical past who will be the ones sent by Yahweh to pronounce his judgment starting from the first trumpet, like I said, until the 5th trumpet. These judgments will affect not only will be effective not only in the land of Yashraal but the entire earth. And that's why when they will be cut off by because the judgments that they are going to prophesy from the land is going to affect the entire earth. All right? So these 2 prophets will be Rawach and Alahayam, the only 2 prophets that were taken up alive into heaven in chariots of fire. So you have to ask yourself this question. Why was Rawach all the way back, closer to the time of Adam and Hawa? All right? He was taken up in the chariots. And Alahayam, sometime after him, was also taken up to heaven. Why were these 2 men, and only these 2 men, taken up into heaven? And they were, by the way, prophets. Why were they taken up in heaven? Because they have a particular role to play in the end times. And Alahayam is not going to send someone who had already passed on to come back. No, he does not work that way. And he certainly cannot raise up one of us, because look at how we are messed up. We can't even see straight. Furthermore, follow him. And by the way, the people that he will send back, or the prophets that he will send, must be prepared for this role. All right? They must be prepared for this role. And looking at how we are today, do you think that we are prepared to prophesy judgments against anyone? We need to prophesy against our own selves. So these two prophets were taken up to heaven to be prepared to come back down to prophesy judgments, and will not waver when they see and hear the threats coming at them. They're not going to balk. They're not going to blink. They will stand strong in all that they do. Do you see anyone amongst our brethren that will have or can have the stamina that these two men will have? We can't even get the name of Alahayam correct. All right. So it cannot be any of us on the earth. None of us on the earth are not fit and cannot qualify to be the ones to prophesy against the beast empire and its agents and the people on the earth. And when you know the history, it cannot be us anyway. The southern kingdom is up in heaven. The northern kingdom will be on their exodus, heading towards the land. They're not getting over the trauma of that war against the beast empire number 7 that martyred many of their brethren. They're in no condition to prophesy to anyone. They're now in a state of healing, and the Most High is going to lead them in a happy way. No more sorrows for these ones either. So that's why he took up Rawach and Alahayam, because for all these thousands of years, remember, 1,000 years on the earth is like one day in heaven. So it may seem long to us, but really and truly to them, it's not long at all. It's the right length of time for them to get prepared to come back down to do their duty. Okay, let's look at Rawach HaQadash to see why Rawach and Alahayam. Some people said Masha. It cannot be Masha. Masha has passed away. Yes, he was seen on the Mount of Transfiguration with Hamashiach, but he came to represent the law. And Alahayam was seen, and he came to represent the prophet. So Hamashiach stood in the midst of them to show us today that he is the fulfillment of the law and the prophets and the prophecies. Prophecies. He is the fulfillment. Rawach HaQadash, the book of Genesis, chapter 5, verse 23. And all the days of Rawach were 365 years. And Rawach walked with Alahayam, and he was not, for Alahayam took him. Took him where? Where did he take him? Meaning he is no longer on the earth. He was no longer on the earth. Why? Because Alahayam took him. He did not die. Some people are saying that Rawach died. There's no evidence anywhere that stated that he died. When you go to the Apocrypha now, it gives you more clarification as to what happened to Rawach. Let's go to the book of Yashar, the book of Jasher, chapter 3, verse 36. When the kings returned, they caused a census to be taken in order to know the number of remaining men that went with Hanawak. And it was on the seventh day that Hanawak ascended into heaven in a whirlwind with horses and chariots of fire. That's why the fire is representative of the glory of Alahayam Yahweh. So anytime you see the fire and the chariots of fire or horses of fire, that's glory. And the whirlwind is the presence of Alahayam, right? Because remember, Yahazaka'al, he saw the whirlwind. And who was in the whirlwind? It was Alahayam Yahweh with it, sitting on his throne along with the cherubim and the ophanim. Or was it the seraphim? The seraphim and the ophanim. All right, let's read on. Verse 37. And on the eighth day, all the kings that had been with Hanawak sent to bring back the number of men that were with Hanawak in that place from which he ascended into heaven. They went looking for him, couldn't find him. He already warned them, I'm going away, you're not going to find me. But they didn't listen. Verse 38. All those kings went to the place, and they found the earth there filled with snow, and on the snow were large stones of snow. And one said to another, Come, let us break through the snow and see. Perhaps the men that remained with Hanawak are dead and are now under the stones of snow. And they searched, but they could not find Hanawak, for he had ascended into heaven. And there's a contrast here. Chariots of fire, horses of fire, as compared to the snow that was on the ground. So we know this fire was not literal fire. It was the glory of Alahayam Yahweh. Let's move on to Yashar, chapter 4, verse 1. All the days that Hanawak lived on the earth were 365 years, just like in what we've seen in the book of Genesis, Barashayaf, chapter 5, verse 23. Now let's move on to verse 2 of Yashar chapter 4. And when Hanawak had ascended into heaven, all the kings of the earth rose and took Methuselah his son and anointed him. So I didn't complete that verse because I found exactly what I was looking for, and the rest of the verse was not relevant. Okay? So we know that Hanawak ascended into heaven in chariots of fire. So let's look at 2 Malachayam, 2 Kings chapter 2, verse 1. And it came to pass, when Yahweh would take up Alahayam, now this is Elijah, into heaven by a whirlwind, that Alahayam went with Alayashao, that's Elisha, from Gilgal. Now let's drop down to verse 11. And it came to pass as they still went on and talked, that behold, there appeared a chariot of fire and horses of fire, and parted them asunder. And Alahayam went up by a whirlwind into heaven. And Alayashao saw it, and he cried, my father, the chariot of Yashraal, and the horsemen thereof. And he saw him no more. And he took hold of his own clothes and rent them in two pieces. So I have a study called The Chariots of Yashraal. Please go take a look at it. It's all about the southern kingdom going up in the same fashion as Alahayam and Hanawak. Okay? They're going with horses, and they're both going to be on fire. And that's the glory of Alahayam Yahweh. Now there was a reason why these two prophets were taken up in chariots of fire into heaven. And to note that they were both taken up alive and are still alive until this time when they will be returned to the earth as the two witnesses. Their arrival will be sometime after the great second exodus of the northern kingdom begins. So remember There's going to be the war, the first 7 years, the first half of the 7 years, which will be 3.5 years. The northern kingdom will be warring with the beast empire and the anti-Messiah. Then the great earthquake will come and completely shut that down, because all technology will be destroyed and those devils will be put in prison. Gadriel will be ousted. So this empire will have no leader, no demonic evil leader. Or it will still have its earthly agents, but they wouldn't know what to do. They'll be too afraid because of the effect of this great earthquake. Remember, they're calling on the rocks to fall on them. They're running and hiding. They can't hide from the face of Yahweh and his son. All right? So after the great earthquake, the northern kingdom will begin their second exodus, because that's when seal number 5 will seal number 7 will be broken. I'm going backwards. Seal number 7 will be broken. Seal number 5 will be the martyrdom, the go ahead from Alahayam, Yahweh, to the beast, the two beasts, to war against the northern kingdom. Seal number 6 will be the great earthquake. Seal number 7 will be the northern kingdom beginning their exodus. And that's when heaven will be quiet for half an hour, because it's going to be a tremendous time for the northern kingdom. All right. Now this is to match that 3.5 year period of the time for the northern kingdom to arrive in our land called Yashrael. So it take them, when they begin their second exodus, it will take them 3.5 years to travel from where they will be all the way to our land Yashrael. Because it's not fleeing, they're not running, they're walking. And I did a study on that, okay? Many studies on that. So they'll be arriving in our land called Yashrael, which will be desolate of buildings and people by that time, and due to the prophesying of these two witnesses. So this is because the two witnesses, they will appear in the land of Yashrael, where the fakers are, and they will prophesy from there. And everything that's going to go on, we're going to address that in another study, but not here. What will happen to the two witnesses? So let's look at Revelation chapter 11, verse 4. These are the two olive trees and the two candlesticks standing before Alahayam of the earth. So just looking at this verse should tell you everything that you need to know about these two men. And why it cannot be symbolic of the two nations. Just read it for what it is. It is because of this verse where many have fallen into error to think that the two olive trees represent the two kingdoms of Yashrael. It is made clear in this chapter 11 that they are standing before Alahayam in his throne room, which is present tense continuous, meaning they're still there. They have been there, they are there, and they will continue to be there until they're sent to the earth. So how can it be the two nations, the two kingdoms of Yashrael? How can it be possible? Which means that currently they are still there and will remain there until they are sent to the earth for their mission. Therefore, as the southern kingdom is scattered to the four winds on the earth, and the northern kingdom is hidden in Africa, how can this verse lead anyone to think that it has anything to do with the two kingdoms of Yashrael? It is not possible, even credible. It's not even logical. All right? When you know the history, when you know the end time events that are due to come, you will have to realize that it cannot be symbolic. These two witnesses cannot be symbolic of the two nations of Yashrael. Impossible. Let's look at Zechariah chapter 4, verse 1. And the angel that talked with me came again and woke me as a man that is wakened out of his sleep, and said unto me, What do you say? And I said, I have looked, and behold, a candlestick all of gold, with a bowl upon the top of it, and his 7 lamps thereon, and 7 pipes to the 7 lamps, which are upon the top of. Let me read that again. Which are upon the top thereof, and the 2 olive trees by it, one upon the right side of the bowl, and the other upon the left side thereof. So I answered and spoke to the angel that talked with me, saying, What are these, Adonai? Now, Adonai, they use the L word there. So this will give us an indicator or indication that it is not an ordinary angel, but it is Hamashiach that he's speaking to. He's being addressing. Because if it was a regular angel, he would not allow Zechariah to address him as that name. All right? Let's read on. Verse 5. Then the angel that talked with me answered and said unto me, Do you not know what they are? And I said, No, Adonai. Then he answered and spoke unto me, saying, This is the word of Yahweh unto Zerubbabel, saying, Not by might, nor by power, but by my Rawach, by my spirit, said Yahweh Sabaoth, Yahweh of hosts. Who are you, O great mountain? Now, this speaking to Babylon. Before Zerubbabel, you shall become a plain. He's going to level it. And he shall bring forth the headstone, speaking of Zerubbabel. And that headstone is a plumb line thereof, with shoutings, crying, Grace, grace unto it, favor, favor unto it. Let's read on. I'm going to explain all of this in a little while. Verse 8. Moreover, the word of Yahweh came unto me, saying, The hands of Zerubbabel have laid the foundation of this house. Which house is he speaking of? He's speaking of the temple. And this is a literal temple. This is not symbolic. But yet, at the same time, it is talking about worship. Let's read on. His hands shall also finish it, and you shall know that Yahweh Sabaoth has sent me unto you. For who has despised the day of small things? For they shall rejoice and shall see the plummet. That plummet is just like the headstone. It's a plumb line. It's a measuring tool used in building. Remember, Yehochanan had the reed to measure the temple and the altar and those who were worshiping in the temple. And here we see Zerubbabel with a plumb line doing the same thing, because he is establishing something here. He's building, or rather rebuilding, the house of Alahayam. Let's read on. In the hand, let's start over. For they shall rejoice and shall see the plummet in the hand of Zerubbabel with those 7. Those are the eyes of Yahweh, which ran to and fro through the whole earth. So those 7, he's speaking of the 7, let me see if I can find it. The 7 branches, the 7 pipes with the 7 lamps, right? If you go up to verse, let's see which verse this is, verse 2. It talks about the 7 lamps thereon and the 7 pipes to the 7 lamps. So those 7 lamps and 7 pipes are all one and the same, and they're leading to the candlestick. And next to, on either side of this candlestick, we see the 2 olive trees. Just like the 2 olive trees that are before Alahayam Yahweh of the earth. All right. So the seven there, seven lamps, seven pipes, are the seven eyes, which is the sevenfold spirit Rawach of Alahayam Yahweh. That this is Yahweh, sorry, this is Rawach HaQadash. All right? There are not seven spirits, there's a sevenfold spirit, meaning he's complete. And not only is he complete, but he's omnipresent. That's why he goes through the whole earth. And he can be in all places, all at the same time, because he's omnipresent. Let's read on. Verse 11. Then answered I and said unto him, what are these two olive trees upon the right side of the candlestick and upon the left side thereof? And I answered again and said unto him, what be these two olive branches which through the two golden pipes, empty the golden oil out of themselves? And he answered me and said, do you not know what these are? And I said, no. Adonai. Then he said, these are the two anointed ones who stand by Yahweh of the whole earth. So you see this phrase, or rather this sentence, is repeated in Yochanan chapter 11 verse, let's go back there, chapter 11 verse 4. These are the two olive trees and the two candlesticks standing before Alahayam of the earth. So this in this section, in this particular sentence, Yochanan has included the two candlesticks because they represent the light of Alahayam Yahweh. They're not just bringing his oil to the earth, but they're also bringing his light to the earth. And similarly, these two here, there are two anointed ones who stand by Yahweh of the whole earth. So were there two standing then? Are those the same two that were standing then where Zechariah saw that now Yochanan is seeing? Of course, they're the one and the same two people, Hanawak and Alahayam. But this prophecy that Zechariah has a twofold fulfillment. So let me read it, because once again I'll be repeating myself. To understand this prophecy given to Zechariah, we have to first understand that this prophecy is twofold in its fulfillment. Zerubbabel was the grandson of King Jehoiakim, who was the king of the southern kingdom. He was the king that was taken in captivity by the Babylonians. All right? So Zerubbabel was the grandson of this king who was taken in captivity. Zerubbabel's name means sown in Babylon, and he was the leader of the first group of returning exiles from Babylon, which explains the meaning of his name, as he was born, or you can say sown, in Babylon. That's where he came from, just like how we are today. Our great-great-grandparents were taken in slavery on the ships, and all the generation after them were born in the lands of their captivity up to us today. We were sown in Babylon. He returned, speaking of Zerubbabel, to the land Yashrael with the mission to rebuild the temple and to restore worship. This was the will of Alahayam Yahweh. That's why we see Rawach HaQadash was with him. And that's why Zerubbabel had the plummet line, which is the plumb line. The headstone is the same thing. It's a plummet. So that is a building tool that they use to make sure that everything is straight. All right? So he laid the foundation, and Yahweh said, as he laid the foundation, he's going to complete the building of my temple. Let's read on. It was with the help of Ozariah, Nehemiah, so that's Ezra, Nehemiah, and the others, that true worship was restored. This was that time. Okay? When we read the accounts of Ozariah and Nehemiah, we see that there was a lot of resistance for this rebuilding of our temple, as they had many enemies. But it was by the might of Yahweh that this task was accomplished, led by Zerubbabel, the new leader of the southern kingdom. The 7 pipes to the 7 branches represent the sevenfold Rawach of Alahayam, who is Rawach HaQadash. And the candlestick is symbolic of the light, the glory of Alahayam Yahweh. So that's why the 2 candles, the 2 olive trees were standing next to the light. All right? They were standing next to the candlestick, and it wasn't the oil that was pouring into the candlestick came from somewhere. Where did it come from? It came from Yahweh. He poured in them, and they then poured back into the candlestick, which is symbolic of his glory, because the tasks that they will be sent to do, and knowing too that these 2 are the 2 witnesses to come, the tasks that they are sent to do, that they will be sent to do, will be to pour his glory upon the earth. He's going to get all the glory for all the things that they're going to do. So even though they're prophesying judgment, he is getting the glory. Because what happened to the Gentiles in that land after the great earthquake? Well, it was, let's not say the great earthquake, but there will be an earthquake in the land of Yashrael. 7,000 of those people are going to pass away. Let me use a different word. They're going to pass away. And the rest will be so frightened they gave him, Alahayam Yahweh, glory while they're fleeing from the land. So he's going to get the glory for everything that these 2 witnesses are going to do. All right, so he's pouring in them even while they're standing next to him, because later on he's going to send them to the earth, and they're going to pour out onto the earth, which will cause him to receive glory that is due to him, the praises that are due to him, because of their task, the mission that they were sent to do. All right? It's all about worship. At the end of the day, Alahayam is establishing who he is. He's establishing his righteousness and his holiness upon this earth. Either you submit to him or be destroyed. That's what it's coming down to. It was under the guidance of Rawach HaQadash, who spoke through the 2 prophets, Ozariah and Nehemiah, who assisted Zerubbabel and the other leaders in restoring the temple, and the prophecy, the 7 pipes leading to the 7 pipes leading, let's see what it was. I get lost. It's just gone clean out of my head. The 7 pipes leading to the 7 lamps, yes. All to do with Rawach HaQadash. He was the one who guided them in this task, in this mission, to restore the temple and to restore true worship in the land. And the people were ready for it, because when they came out of captivity, when you read the book of Ozariah, you see that the people were only too happy to be restored for their worship, the temple, everything to be restored. Let's read on. How does this relate to us and the future fulfillment of this prophecy? Currently, the southern kingdom is living in exile under the same Babylonian system as our forefathers, except we're scattered and not concentrated in one location. Now, a lot of people call the different countries that our people are living in Babylon. It is not. The Babylon system is what we're living under. It is not about a country. Because as you see it, according to the prophecy, this whole earth will be under the control of a beast empire. So how can you call one country, or you can call all these different countries, Babylon, when the borders are going to be erased? It's not a country. Babylon will be a system. Actually, we are currently living under the Babylonian system, not to be confused with Babylon, the mother of harlots. All right? So we're currently living under a Babylonian system, which we know will evolve into the beast empire. All right? It's not going to be called that because they already have the mother of harlots with that name. But remember, Babylon is a name given to confusion. It means confusion. All right? That's what it is, confusion. They're spiritually confused, emotionally confused, everything about them, confusion. So don't get hung up over that name. So currently we're living under that system of confusion. If you doubt me, just turn on your news and you will see all the different the messes that are out there. Pure confusion. The protesting, the riots, this, that, confusion, because we're living under Babylonian system of confusion. Let's read on. We will return to our land, to return to true worship, as Hamashiach will establish his temple upon Mount Shalawam. All right, so I did a study about that as well. Before he comes, the second fulfillment of Zechariah chapter 4 prophecy will occur, and it will be with the two witnesses, Rawach and Alahayam. These two prophets will set the foundation for the restoration of true worship in our land, Yashwa'al, by prophesying the judgments of Alahayam Yahweh on the earth. This will clear our land of all foreigners and their debris, their garbage, making it desolate but not destroyed, making it empty of all evidence that it was once occupied. This will be in preparation for the coming northern kingdom. Then later on, not too long afterwards, Hamashiach and the southern kingdom to live and reign in the land of Yashwa'al forevermore. All right, so there's going to be a second part to this study, hopefully just one, not two, because this is quite deep. All right, so let's end with the blessing for Yashwa'al taken from Madabar chapter 6 verses 24 to 26. That's Numbers chapter 6 verses 24 to 26. Yabarakak Yahweh wa Yashamarak. May Yahweh bless you and keep you. Ya'ar Yahweh panayo alayak wa yachanak. May Yahweh cause his face to shine upon you and have favor upon you. Yasha'a Yahweh panayo alayak wa yashamlak Shalawam. May Yahweh lift up his face upon you and give you peace. And now we're going to recite the command we were instructed to recite when we lie down, when we get up, when we go out, and when we come in, taken from Alahayam chapter 6 verses 4 and 5. That's Deuteronomy chapter 6 verses 4 and 5. Shama o Yashwa'al, Yahweh Alahayana, Yahweh Achad, wa Ahabath Ath, Yahweh Alahayak, Bakal Babak, Wabakal Napashat, Wabakal Ma'adak. Hear, O Yashwa'al, Yahweh our Alahayam is one Yahweh, and you shall love Yahweh our Alahayam, your Alahayam, with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. And with that, I will say, Shalawam, Shalawam. All praises to the Most High, Abba Yah.